For 2 decades, painfully shy butler Albert has been pretending to be a man to keep her job. But then she meets Hubert, also secretly a woman, who has found a partner to help maintain her masquerade.
Jesus, you're a woman.
You won't tell on me.
Seeking the same arrangement, Albert woos a young girl that could change everything.
I think you are the strangest man I've ever met.
In Albert Nobbs.
You've both just seen it. Liz, I know you're bursting to talk about this movie.
Albert Nobbs is a film that's not for everyone. Lucky for me, I enjoyed myself immensely, but that's because I read it more as a fantastic tale other than one based in reality. And that's because our character, Albert Nobbs, played by Glenn Close, does not live in reality. She lives in a world far above this world, and she has these fantastic monologues, these soliloquies that she delivers to herself in front of the mirror, going to sleep while counting her money. And that aspect of the script and performance detaches her from the rest of the story and just makes it a really interesting experiment to watch.
I read the film differently. I think Albert Nobbs has ideas that I guess could traffic in fantasy. I just read them as kind of dumb, to be perfectly honest. Glenn Close plays a character that is so repressed in her ideas and her character that she has nowhere to go. There's no growth to this character whatsoever. What the script should go after in terms of someone actually discovering this character, that conflict is not there, and therefore the film doesn't have a lot of tension, it doesn't have a very interesting lead character, and it's kind of boring.
I take issue with the fact that she isn't dressing like a man to get a better job. She's dressing like a man because she was sexually abused, and this is her reaction to it. And that's not something that the film doles out to you in exposition. It's something that you can put together.
You spend a lot of times with Albert Nobbs counting money that she puts under the floorboards. I mean, her dreams are entirely economic. They're to open up this tobacconist shop.
It is interesting, though, that most things happen around Albert Nobbs, and Albert Nobbs doesn't necessarily instigate things. And I think that is also, for me, a charm of the film, but a piece that didn't work for you.
Well, it's the mark of poor screenwriting. If you go back to Screenplay 101, you can't have a repressed character that doesn't go anywhere. One of the screenwriters of this piece is Glenn Close, and she didn't hit the beats of what a classical screenplay should have.
How are the performances in Albert Nobbs? Is Glenn Close convincing as this lead character?
Well, this is where I think Albert Nobbs succeeds.
I was wondering, Miss Dawes, if you would care to come out for a walk.
Pardon me, Mr. Nobbs?
I'm off duty at 3 tomorrow, and if you're not engaged.
Engaged?
Glenn Close is a tremendous actress with a tremendous amount of range, and she's basically having to go behind this facade of this character that's completely repressed. Even though I think that she's credible and interesting, I don't think she gives a magnificent performance.
I thought it was one of the best performances I've seen this year. She had the physicality down pat. She had the face with these wide eyes, always in awe of the things around her. I don't know whether she passes or not as a man. I wasn't even thinking about that because I honestly was just so sucked into her performance.
Glenn Close finds one note. It's an interesting note, but that's the only note that that character can hit.
What about Rodrigo García? He's the son of Gabriel García Marquez. What kind of comment is this director making?
I think he gets good performances from his actress, Glenn Close, and from some of his supporting performers, but ultimately I don't think that the story has a whole lot to hold your attention.
The director does examine class to a certain extent in that we have characters of the upper class who do lead self-indulgent lives, and then we see the congruent depiction in the lower classes and the lack of boundaries there as well. And it's an interesting comment on how we're not that different after all. There are scenes like Janet McTeer's character and Glenn Close's character appearing on a beach wearing women's clothing, running across looking at the ocean, and it's such an offbeat scene.
I read that scene as basically the only sense of liberation that this Albert Nobbs character has ever been able to get. Here she's been in almost her entire life posing as a man to be working at this hotel with dreams of bigger things, and the one moment where we see her out of her shell is when she goes out on the beach with Janet McTeer dressed as a woman.
To me, she looks incredibly uncomfortable and unhappy and awkward. And so I read that as actually a really sad scene where she doesn't fit in that dress.
Wow.
So,
oh my gosh.
Very different pages.
yes.
You all saw the same movie
Yes.
at the same time.
Yes.
I think that it's time for us to hear your verdict, so if you wouldn't mind taking your tickets.
Its Oscar-nominated performances give it legs to stand on, but be aware that Albert Nobbs is a slow trek. Stream it.
It's not a perfect film, but Albert Nobbs is unpredictable and unusual, and there are not many films like it these days. So I say, see it.
Well, that's 1.5 tickets for Albert Nobbs, which is a see it. She wins.
I won.
Somehow. We'll give the octogenarians a nice afternoon nap with this film.